Hi everyone, it's Simon Keeling here at weatherweb.net. It is Wednesday the 9th of January. Thanks again for watching. Of course, the sites get free of charge by the adverts you see around the screen here, so by you coming back, viewing the site, viewing the adverts, that's what keeps us free of charge. This is how it feels a little when you're looking at the GFS today, although yesterday on the ECMWF it felt a little bit like this, a little bit like Jekyll and Hyde. You almost don't know what you're going to get from run to run, and it seems to just switch and change as it goes from run to run. So you've got to take a step back in this situation and just hope for the very best, and hope that somehow the model can get it right. In fact, look, if I go like that, I can be Dr. Jekyll. Look, there we are. Yeah, you've just got to hope somehow that the model can pick this one out and can somehow get it right, or at least most of the models can. I think the GFS that's come out at 6 o'clock this morning looks as if it's going to break back in the mild conditions into next week, and I think that's probably overdone, particularly when you look at other models. But we can't just ditch it, because this is a changing situation. Cold air is very close to us. It's going to be swapping and changing over the next few days. Real critical is what happens this weekend and how cold the air actually gets during the course of this weekend. So let's just first of all just want to show the ECMWF versus the Canadian, and just show you how similar these two mods are. Here's the ECMWF from today. This is for tomorrow, and this is for midnight on Friday. You notice what happens here is that my ridge that I was telling you about gets cut off as this feature here just comes through and breaks the neck of the ridge in here, and we just get this westerly flow developing. Then into Saturday, here's the area of low pressure we're watching very closely for Saturday as this thing zips its way southeastwards. That's the thing that brings the risk of snow, and then look, in come the cold easterly winds with the ridge building back into the Atlantic, and it's those easterlies that wind through. Then what we find is a second area of low pressure moving its way southwards here through the course of Monday and into Tuesday, and it's that brings the further threat of snow across the south of the country, and the ECMWF then puts us back into this cold, bitterly cold easterly wind as we're heading towards the middle, towards the end of the week. And in fact, look, another area of low pressure coming in, bringing more snow probably within this zone if the ECMWF was correct, and then we just finish off with a nice northerly blast just to freeze everything even more. Now the ECMWF is cold on today's run. It was mild on yesterday's run, but what's interesting is if we just compare it with the Canadian ensembles. So this again is for midnight last night, and as we go forwards, just watch what happens. Look, here's the neck being broken of the ridge through here, and this is the area of low pressure coming in for Saturday. There it goes. Look, there's the position at midday on Saturday, heading off into the Bay of Biscay, then clears away southwards. In come our east and northeasterly winds, look, and then what we find is that we get a secondary low coming through during Monday. That zips its way southeastwards, brings a second hit possibly of snowfall on Monday, and then as we go through next week, we stay with this cold easterly flow right through, and then what we find is that eventually the flow goes into the northeast, having had another hit of snow coming through again in this area by the end of next week, and then we go into a northerly flow. So this kind of setup is a snow lover's paradise, but don't get jumping up too much just yet. This could change. The GFS has consistently kept things warmer, although the ensemble has gone on the colder side. So I think we do have to weigh in heavily on the cold side of things. We've got to be looking at 70 to 80% risk of things being cool to cold, and probably that sort of 20% risk that the milder air does manage to break through. It's always a possibility, but at the moment it looks as if the cold weather is going to be ensuing. This is the ensemble. Again, this is for this morning. As we just go through, you'll notice what happens is that we get that area of low pressure that zips its way southeastwards through here during the course of Saturday, brings snow, or the threat of snow, through the Midlands of Wales. It moves off into the continent. Look, here's our ridge out in the Atlantic here, keeping the mild air away, and then as we get in towards Monday of next week, what we find is still areas of low pressure but it doesn't have such a pronounced area of low pressure look coming down during the course of Monday. It has it more as a trough, and that's where the GFS sees it too. And then what it tends to do is to keep us in this cool flow coming in from the northeast right the way through. It's not quite so cold as the Canadian or as the ECMWF, and by the end of next week it does try to bring the west or southwesterlies back in and just continues this battle across the country, although it does try to make things milder as we get into the latter stages of next week. And the temperature profile from the Ensemble looking like this, where we've got this kind of dip in temperatures look into the early part of next week, but then he does try to bring them up again by next weekend. I suspect that we are somewhere in between the two on this. So how does that leave us with detail? Well, I'm going to use the Ensemble because I do think the Ensemble probably has got the detail about right. And this is the chart for today. Let's just go forwards a little bit. Look, this takes us into the 10th, so this is taking us into close of play tomorrow, because that front coming southeast is bringing some clouds and outbreaks of rain, but it's this feature that we want to concentrate on, the area of low pressure going south on Saturday. Now, if you look at the source region here, you see that that's bringing in winds from the east or the southeast. Now, what's interesting here is how quickly temperatures fall as that feature pulls away. What happens in the upper air as that feature pulls away during Saturday afternoon, and where does it put most snow? So if we just look at the 850 temperatures, in fact the 850 temperatures I want are the UK 850 temperatures. So if we just bring up the 850 temperatures for the UK, what we're looking for is that magic -5 number or somewhere close. So this is the analysis for this morning. Then we're going into this afternoon. You see we're sort of -2s across the north, +1s across the south. Now watch what happens. This is into Friday. Notice the air has cooled down across the whole of the country, -3s to -4 at 850 millibars. Low pressure comes in across the southeast. Sorry, across the southwest. Here it comes. This is our area of low pressure. Now, by 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, we're raining pretty well much in this area here. Now, you notice what's going on. Cooler air is coming in on this easterly flow. Notice these temperatures, look. You see this divided line here, this -5 line here. Well, what you would find given that is that within this area here, there would probably be an area of snow. Now, I think what this does is it leaves us with our threat area for snow at the moment somewhere in here, and I think that has to be a significant snow risk in there for Saturday. Most of it probably over high ground, so most of it probably sitting up over high ground. Could be 10-15 centimeters over high ground. Lower levels, I think we're getting sort of 2 to 5 centimeters possibly. We need to watch that. This is a scenario very similar to previous snow situations through the Midlands, through Wales, through East Anglia and Southern England, where we get a front kind of track through, low pressure going to the south. It can bring us 18 hours worth of snow. It's something that we need to be watching very, very carefully. And then let's just get back to the prediction here. As we get into Sunday, northeasterly flow comes in, very cold for all of us. And again, let's just refer you back to those 850 temperatures for Sunday. We've got -9s and -8s at 850. That's going to see temperatures struggling to get too much above freezing, giving those temperatures at 5,000 feet. And then into Monday, this is the trough feature here that the ECMWF and the Canadian models make more of. Let's just get the Canadian back up for Monday. Look, this is the feature they're making more of. There's midday on Monday as far as the Canadian is concerned. There's midnight on Tuesday again from the Canadian. If we just go back to the Ensemble, you see it's making far less of this feature here. So it does pull it southwards. It tries to do something with it during Monday evening into Tuesday. Now, I think the jury's out on that one just at the moment, but what I suspect is that an area of snow showers comes southeastwards during Tuesday. And then we're kind of left with that cold northeasterly flow. I think we're going to stick with the idea of a cold northeasterly flow. We're going to pick up on the Canadians and talk about it going into a cold easterly across much of the country through next week. I think we can't rule out the risk of periods of snow, particularly towards the end of the week and into next weekend, and the idea of it being very cold. So temperatures by day probably somewhere between about 0 and 3 degrees Celsius. Temperatures by night -2s probably to -6s, but -10s are likely if we do get any snow cover. So I think probably the message to take from this forecast is that cold weather still looks the most likely option here. How long it lasts is open to some debate, but at the moment we're leaning towards the idea of it staying cold into next week. The potential for it being very cold has increased, there's no doubt about it. The risk of cold weather has increased. However, models aren't good at dealing with this sort of situation, although the evidence is stacking up that it will be cold and it will stay cold for quite a while. So the snow lovers out there and the cold weather lovers, this is a video for you. This is one that you've been waiting for. But I think we still have to think of the possibility that the mild air could break back through, although it's looking unlikely. I don't see any reason for that to happen, but it's looking unlikely, but it's still there as a possibility. So I'm kind of treading this one, treating it with each day as it comes, really. I think we need to get Saturday out of the way. That's going to be our first snow threat day in the south. We need to then get Monday out of the way and see what happens late on Monday. Does another snow risk come along? And then we need to look into next week for this risk of some severe overnight frost and some very cold days next week, and highlight the risk of another hit of snow towards the back end of next week. I think the trick here is going to be, if the 12 o'clock runs of the GFS, which will become available on WeatherWeb at about 6 o'clock this evening, if they come out with the same pattern as the Canadian and as the ECMWF, we're probably game on. If they're still going mild, we still need to keep this doubt in our mind and check and see what the operational GFS is picking up on. The reason I'm so doubtful is that the operational GFS is not bad actually. It's picking up cold signals. It did it last year, it did it the year before. The fact that it hasn't got that is something that troubles me a little bit, but it's something that we can look at. So I'm wittering on now. I could go on for a long time about this, explaining the dynamics of it and exactly what's happening, but I won't, because it'll bore you. So for now I'm going to leave you with that. Thanks for watching. As I said before, weatherweb.net is kept free of charge by the adverts you're seeing around the screen, so by you coming back and using the adverts, that's what keeps us free of charge, and by using the charts, etc. So thank you for doing that. For now though, keep the sun shining, and bye for now. Thanks for watching.